Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Elizabeth and I run the blog lifefromtheviolasection.com where I share my favorite practice tips, general advice, and tech for musicians. Today I want to share 5 very basic practice tips with you if you're a beginner or if you have been playing for a long time and would just like a reminder of some good practice strategies, some good ways to practice efficiently that will help you for as long as you choose to play an instrument. Let's get right in. So my first very basic practice tip is to warm up on your instrument. You can also warm up by stretching. Just warming up your body is a great way to get started, especially if you play a physically intense instrument like the viola, which is very heavy and also very taxing here and sometimes in our neck and shoulders and back. Or another very heavy instrument, maybe like the tuba or something. I'm sure all instruments are physically pretty intense. So warming up your body is a great way to get ready to do that physically intense, basically workout. So warm up your body or warm up with a scale or both. Both is preferable. Warm up with a scale or with some targeted exercises to work on things that you've been struggling with, maybe with fourth finger if you play a string instrument, or warming up with a specific bow stroke, or warming up specific parts of your range that you're not quite comfortable in, no matter what family of instrument you play. If you choose to warm up with a scale, which I highly recommend because it's a great way to practice other things on top of just the notes, then look at the repertoire, the piece, whatever you're going to be working on later on in your practice session, and see what key is this piece in. Therefore, what scale should I work on today? So if you're working on a piece in C major, warm up with the C major scale because you'll find a lot of the same finger patterns and placements in the scale as you will in the piece of music. Or same if it's in D flat or A flat, practice with that scale. Or if it's in a minor key, warm up with that minor key because you will encounter a lot of the same finger patterns and a lot of the same intervals and ideas in your warm up as you will later on in the more difficult piece that you're working on. My second very basic practice tip is to practice with a purpose. Don't just go into a practice session knowing I have to practice, I have to play for today. You can at the start just to get yourself playing, but then think, what do I want to accomplish? What am I really focusing on this week? What do I have to get better at? Is there a deadline I'm trying to meet? Do I have an audition coming up where I need to prepare these certain things? Think about what you need to accomplish in the music that you're working on and how you can effectively get there. So go in with a specific goal in mind and you are so much more likely to be productive because you're going to be actively working towards that rather than just playing through the music and thinking, well, I think that was okay. I'll play through it again just to see, okay, it was fine. Like, you're not actively looking for ways to improve. Go in with a goal. My third very basic practice tip is to practice in parts or in chunks. So break down whatever you're working on into smaller pieces because the smaller chunk you choose, the more you can focus on making everything correct and making sure that everything feels good. So if you're working on a 2-page piece and you just play through the whole thing, it's very likely that by the time you get to the end of it, you're not going to remember what went really well and what didn't feel so good. If you play just 1 or 2 lines at a time, you're much more likely to be able to analyze it because it only took up maybe like 10 or 15 seconds instead of 2 or 3 minutes. And so you can actually remember back that far and analyze what you did and remember, okay, I did this thing really well, but this technique wasn't its best. So I should go through it again and focus on this technique or break it down and do these little things. Also, if you break it into pieces, you can go one little chunk at a time and master each chunk before moving on to the next one. That can be kind of like breaking it into a video game, into levels. You can master the level and then you get to move on. And then finally, by the end, you've accomplished everything and you've won the game. Very basic practice tip number 4, take lots of breaks. It's important to rest your mind and rest your body when we're doing these very intense basically workouts when we're practicing. We're using our mind a lot, at least, especially if you're analyzing things and if you're really focusing on the mechanics of everything that you're doing. You are using up a lot of brain space and a lot of brain power. So be sure that you take breaks, mental breaks, between different sections of music or between different repertoire that you're working on. It can also be very physically taxing, especially if you're working on a really, really quick piece. You don't want to get carpal tunnel or any other really bad muscle injuries. So take breaks at least 5 minutes so that you can rest, so that your muscles have time to relax, and so that your brain can decompress a little bit. Be sure to drink some water, take care of yourself, and it's also totally okay if you break up your practice session into chunks throughout the day. That's also okay, as long as your brain can get into it, as long as that works for you mentally and physically, then that's also a great way to practice instead of spending an hour or 2 or 3 hours all at once focusing on your practicing. If you can do 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, all focusing on different things or maybe building throughout the day, then that can be a very, very helpful way to stay productive because your brain likes to work in small little bursts, and that is really going to work with your brain to maximize your practice. And my final, 5th very basic practice tip today is to record yourself. Making a recording can be very, very scary, but the more we do it, the more desensitized you'll get to it. So listening to yourself is such a good way to really, truly, honestly analyze what's going on in your playing, what is actually sounding really good and what actually isn't going so well. Sometimes we get a very different idea in our heads of what we sound like when we don't ever listen back to ourselves. We get so much information so close to our ears with our instruments. Sometimes it's deceiving, and sometimes we think, oh, I sound just like the recording. I sound just like what I listened to. And then you listen back to your own recording, and it's not nearly as good. So it's very good to keep yourself in check and stay honest by recording yourself and actually following through and listening to it. Recording yourself can be difficult. And then actually going back and listening to or watching the recording can be even more difficult. So be sure to follow through, record yourself. You can either listen to it back right away or you can wait a day and at the beginning of my next practice session, I'll watch the video, maybe take some notes on it or decide what I want to focus on the next day after I watch the video. You will be able to hear so much. It can be really positive. It can sometimes be really negative, but it really, really keeps you in check and in line with your goals. So those are 5 very, very basic practice tips to get you going in your practice, whether you are new or just need some reminders for practicing your instrument. If you have any other very valuable practice tips that you can't imagine practicing without, please let me know down in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. I post new musical videos almost every Sunday at noon Eastern time, so please subscribe if you'd like to stay in the loop. Thanks for watching.